So hello and welcome to the Q&A session for the ARMD3 Advanced Route to Market Demonstrator competition. So the full applicant briefing webinar has been pre-recorded and is available on the IFS dates page. This was also circulated by email this morning, so please make sure that any questions that you've got, you have primed and ready for us today. If you would like a PDF of either the presentation that we go through today or the one that's pre-recorded, please contact our customer support team. And for more information on the competition process, please go to the competition briefing applicant information on our YouTube website. So we've got a few brief slides to give you kind of a top-level overview today before we go through any questions that you may have. So I'm going to hand over to Zoe now to run through the scope slides that we have. But whilst we do this, if you could pop any questions that you have in the Q&A box and we'll run through them one by one after we've run through the slides. So if I just hand over to Zoe briefly.
Wonderful, thank you, Rachel. Good morning, I'm Zoe Hall. I head up the competitions and projects team at the APC, and we're delighted to be here regarding the latest CR&D funding round from the Department of Business and Trade delivered by the APC. Like Rachel said, the full briefing is available, so this is to be a quick overview, which will prompt any questions that you may have for later, which I'm also joined by Dan Bunting and Tony Baloney to answer any questions. Okay, next slide, please, Rachel. So on screen, you've got the overview of the application process. Note that this competition is a two-stage process. So there will be an interview should you reach the technical threshold and assessment, which Rachel will go through in more detail shortly. We're looking for R&D projects between 9 and 12 months for on-vehicle automotive applications that can lead to further business exploitation as a direct result of this demonstrator. The projects will be supported by up to 50% government intervention, and we utilise future net zero powertrain technology as a key element in the UK's transition to zero emissions for the auto sector. So first of all, just on this slide, let's have a look at the public description. This is 100 words and needs to be in layman's terms. These will be published, so please make sure that you actually put information in that 100-word summary that is not IP or have got any concerns about. It will be published and people do need to understand it. After that, you've got part 1, which looks at questions 3 to 4, which is the business case and the market opportunity, the project both commercially and technically. Part 2 then looks at the project details, including the technical approach and also the project management. Part 3 focus on the team makeup, so the approach to risk and the outcomes of the project. And the last part concludes with the costs and the added value of the project itself. We then move on to the next slide, which just gives you a very quick summary of the timings, which hopefully you're all very familiar with. As you can see, ARM3 has a compact and deliberately fast-paced awards process. So you'll find stringent requirements in terms of pace for setting up the projects itself as well. So please make sure that you're fully committed to starting the project and finishing within the timelines. Otherwise funding could be lost to the applications. And then let's go through scope. As I say, this is an overview, but do please ask us any questions that aren't clear. So the projects must utilise future net zero powertrain technology to demonstrate how the sector can transition to zero emissions for the automotive sector. Once successfully concluded, these 12-month projects can be used to seed future development programmes in the UK or potentially attract overseas investments here into the UK. Capability demonstration can be through a physical vehicle, a physical subsystem, or an equivalent digital demonstrator that can be operated or displayed at the Cenex Low Carbon Vehicle Show, or should I say, sorry, Cenex Expo in 2025, as a key element of the dissemination requirements. You can see on the left-hand side the key technical scope areas, which align with the Auto Council strategic technologies. And on the right-hand side, you've got the key scope requirements. So as I've said, it's a project grant request of between 500 and 1.5 million, with no more than 50% funded versus project cost. have a project duration of between 9 and 12 months, and must start by October the 1st. So please ensure that you have your match funding well in advance of that start date. The primary application of technologies developed through this competition should be for the auto sector, but cross-sector applications is valuable. And once successfully concluded, the TRL should be between 5 and 6 and MRL 4 to 5. Vehicle applications and scope must include on-highway, including last mile, and off-highway, including agriculture and mining. And we're accepting both single entity and collaborative projects. Just to call out what we're not funding, we're not funding projects that are focused on process or manufacturing, focused on recycling, focused on the development of clean fuels, predominantly off vehicle, or developing either e-scooters or e-bikes. So LCAT's okay, but not pedal assist. Thank you very much, Rachel.
Brilliant, thanks, Zoe. I've got a couple of more slides to run through, just some key parts of the eligibility criteria and application process through IFS, and then we'll move on to the question part of this session. So as previously mentioned, the level of funding awarded will depend upon the type of organisation and the type of research being undertaken in the project. So once you've answered these questions, IFS will calculate your grant percentage. So make sure you're answering the questions correctly in those early stages to make sure that we can give you the correct grant amount. Following on from this, you can see here the grant percentages that you're able to claim. So for a micro or small organisation doing experimental development, you can claim up to 70%. 45%. For industrial research, you can claim up to 70%. And as you can see, the percentages go down on the screen there. So please take a note of those. For more information, please have a look at our general guidance on IFS around research participation rates and percentages.
It is worth just reiterating there, though, Rachel, that the overall project can only be no more than 50% intervention. So if you are an SME and it is a single entity project, even though you potentially could claim 70% for industrial research, you will not be able to claim any more than 50%.
Perfect, thanks, Zoe. So just quickly to run you through the interview section, if you are successful at written stage, you will be invited to progress to the interview, which is the second stage of the process. So if you are successful and you are invited to interview, you can bring up to 6 people to attend the interview. You will have 10 minutes to present a maximum of 5 PowerPoint slides, and it's important that these don't include any videos or embedded links. There is a 15-minute Q&A session led by members of the panel, and this will be directly after your presentation. You will have an opportunity to respond to the assessor feedback so the panel can read it prior to the interview. And the response to feedback, presentations and presenters' names have to be provided ahead of the interview. Full dates and details can be found on the IFS webpage, so please have a look through those. And if you have any further questions, please contact our customer support team. And then finally, for me, before we come to your questions, I just want to reiterate application deadline and how important it is to submit early on the deadline day. So applications close at 11 AM. So please make sure you're submitting early in plenty of time so that if you do have any technical difficulties, our customer support team have time to help you. On the slide here, you can just see us tracking site submissions. And as you can see, most of the submissions come in within the last few minutes heading up to that 11 AM deadline. So please make sure that you're doing it early in good time and that you get your application in so that we can use it as part of the process. Perfect. Okay, so that brings us on to the Q&A session. We'll run through any questions that you have that you've popped into the Q&A box. Whilst we do that, I will leave the key contacts on the screen so that you can either take a screenshot, but also this will be shared with you so you can go back through and have a listen through. Okay, so our first question is, if you're receiving funding from another Innovate stream for a process or design but a lower TRL level, can you apply for this funding? Okay, so it can be quite complicated depending on what the project's about and where you are in the process. So for this question, I would advise that you email in with full details, just so that we have all of the information and we can give you a really accurate answer to that one. So if you could just pop an email over to customer support and copy in the APC email address that you can see on the screen now, we can make sure that we come back to you with an accurate response to that. Thank you.
Thanks, that's great. Just to add to that, I guess the simple answer from our perspective is yes, but you need to make it clear in your application what the relationship is to the other program and how the programs tie together. And obviously you can't ask for funding for repeat activity. But as has been said, please get in touch with the specifics. We're happy to help with that question. Any other questions? We're also really happy to help at the APC with a review of your draft application, understand the scope and objectives. So once again, please get in touch with us at the email address there.
Perfect, thanks, Dan. Okay, so we don't have any more questions in the Q&A box at the moment. Oh, another one's just popped in, but if you keep popping them in the Q&A box so that we can get back to you, please do so as we're talking through. So if the intervention rate is 50% max, does that mean that academic support has to be 50% also?
So I think the feedback on this one from us is that the project can only ask for a maximum of 50%. Eligibility within that can vary dependent upon the consortia if you decide to go ahead with partners. So an academic support function could get a higher percentage, but obviously that would need to be offset. You'd need to do your own maths homework, if you like, to make sure that the project came in with a 50% max request.
And just to add to that, academics can't lead these projects either, so they would have to be part of the consortium.
Correct. We'll leave the Q&A box open so that you can have time to type in any questions that you might have for any of us.
I guess just adding to that previous question, not particularly from a numbers perspective. So these applications can be led by a single organisation. If you decide that you want them to be collaborative, that's allowed. My request again is that you share that information with us ahead of the deadline so that we can discuss the merits of the project and the need for collaboration if you feel it's justified.
So can the other 50% be in kind, not all cash?
No, it's match funded. Question in the chat, Dan, I don't know whether you want to have a look at that one, the B2B stuff. Are we linking up with KTN on this at all?
Just bear with me, let me just open that up. A B2B platform for networking. I think that the honest answer to this is the best thing to do is talk to the APC. We really only function by being part of a UK network of industry, academia and government. So my suggestion, there isn't an online portal, there isn't a specific networking event, but obviously everything we do at the APC is based on that networking and that connectivity. So once again, with this one, please get in touch with us and we'll get into more detail with you on the specifics.
I'm going to take try and answer this question, Rachel. You might have a better clue. My understanding about the 50% does it have to be in the bank before we start. My understanding is that the first quarter of match funding needs to be in the bank. So when you do your finance profile as part of the application in IFS, and say for argument's sake you're going to spend the 200,000, you need to be able to demonstrate that match funding within your bank account. So I believe it's the first quarter only, but we can clarify that if we need to. Is that the same understanding, Rachel, from you, from an innovator?
Yeah, that's my understanding. Yeah, absolutely. So we obviously pay quarterly in arrears for projects. So you need to, as Zoe says, demonstrate that first quarter within your finance section. But if you have any more questions around that, I would just email in and we can get our finance team to get in contact with you just to be sure. So excluding recycling, does this also apply to Second Life? So electrification / battery powered?
Yeah, from our perspective, the technologies that we cover are listed in the scope. If it happened to be a Second Life application, you would have to explain the route to market, the market opportunity, but it can be included as well, provided it meets the scope of the competition.
So any other questions for anybody else, you can just pop them in the chat and the Q&A section. Just a reminder that we will make the link to today's session available on the IFS webpage alongside the link to the original briefing that took place, the pre-recorded briefing that took place. So please go and have a look at both of them after this event. Key contact details on the screen. And we've just had another question. Any limitations or requirements on number in consortium? Can this include UK/European partners?
So I'll have a go at this one again. You have to be a UK legal entity in order to claim grant. So if your organisation is based in Europe, it would need to set up and have a UK legal entity. I'll ask Zoe as well about limitations. I think the limitation on the number of consortia is what is manageable within a quick turnaround, fast start project of 9 to 12 months. If the consortia gets too complex, I think you would end up giving yourselves problems with delivering the project. But Zoe, in terms of a hard and fast rule,
yeah, we don't have one. No, you're right.
So it's what's manageable in terms of consortia if you decide to submit an application that has partners involved.
And then we've got another question that says, to build on that, can the non-UK support be contractors, subcontractors?
So which is the case with any subcontract, you have to justify those costs. And obviously that will be up to the assessors to decide whether that's appropriate for the project itself.
Yeah, so I think the other justification is why either the single entity or the partners can't do that piece of work, and why it's an absolute requirement for a subcon A to be involved, and then why it needs to be a non-UK subcon.
Yeah, and as from a application point of view, when you're justifying that, please make sure you justify it within the questions as well as in your finance summary, just to make sure that the assessors have all the information that they require. And then we've had another question come in to clarify: if I've already secured a current UK grant, can this be applied as a portion of my 50%?
I get the answer to this one. You'd need to look at the terms and conditions of the UKI grant and say whether it is allowed to use that as match funding. I'm not familiar with the grant itself and the details around that, so it might be one that you need to ask Innovate UK on.
Yeah, yeah, it would definitely be to do with the terms and conditions that was within the contract that you signed for your original grant. So yeah, for this one, I would advise that you come to us separately for a little bit more information. Just again, I don't want to advise you incorrectly on this call. I would need to have a look in a bit more detail at the terms and conditions around what you've already signed up to. We'll leave the Q&A box open just for a couple more minutes in case you have any questions. Again, to reiterate, as you go through the process over the next few weeks whilst the competition is open, please contact either ourselves on the customer support or the APC email address on the screen, or both, and we'll endeavour to get back to you with some detailed responses and support where we can. I think if everybody on the call is happy, we could close the Q&A box now, providing no more questions coming in the next kind of minute or so whilst we're talking. But again, just that encouragement to reach out. We are here to support through the process. Copies of these recordings will be made available to you. And to just to come to us and ask the questions that you need as and when you need them. Make sure that you're keeping on track of that application deadline and the submission deadline of 11 AM, and that you're fitting in with those scope criteria that Zoe ran through at the very beginning. There's also more details on our webpage as well as within the original recording, so please go back and watch that through. Has anybody got anything else to add? Anyone? No? Okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much for listening. Thank you to everybody on the call today, and we look forward to receiving your applications.
Thank you.